Under current South African law, babies who are miscarried prior to 26 weeks in the womb are seen as medical waste. Now, this shocking statement means that parents are unable to receive their baby's bodily remains for the purpose of a burial. That's also beside the fact that an unborn baby is a valuable human. Now, Ryan Smith is the founding member of Cause for Justice, a human rights and public interest organization where he currently serves as the CEO and the legal counselor. Ryan, what is the case Voice of the Unborn Baby about? And why do we want to give a voice to especially a baby of 25 weeks and 6 days old a voice?
Yeah. So the case is basically about the humanity and human dignity of unborn babies and the treatment of their bodily remains. At the moment, South African law determines that when a baby is stillborn or a woman has a miscarriage from 26 weeks of the pregnancy or later in the pregnancy, then there are certain obligations that arise for the hospital. That is, they have to issue what is called a stillborn death certificate, and they also have to issue a burial certificate. These two documents entitle the parents to claim the bodily remains of their stillborn baby from the hospital and then to have a burial. But once the miscarriage happens before 26 weeks, the parents have absolute no rights, no entitlements. They have no choice even to ask for the baby's remains for purposes of burial. So this is, in basic terms, what the case is about. You asked the question why we would do this. From our point of view, it's very basic. An unborn baby is an unborn baby, right? It doesn't matter whether there's a miscarriage at 20 weeks or at 39 weeks. We're talking about a human being that was never born alive. Why should it matter what the age or stage of viability is? Because that is the marker that is currently used for purposes of this law in South Africa. They use a 26 weeks viability marker as the reason for giving parents the right or withholding the right from them to receive their baby's remains and having a burial. That makes absolutely no sense because we're still talking about someone who was never born alive. Why should it matter what the viability age is? So when it comes to why we're doing this, we're saying that all human beings have inherent dignity, inherent worth. And the bodies of human beings are worthy of being treated with respect before and after death. Because remember, we have burials for people, or we treat the bodily remains of people who die in a certain dignified manner. And proper burial recognizes the inherent dignity of the human being and treats the human body with the respect it deserves. Now, an unborn baby is also a human being. Medical science confirms this. And we should be able to bury the bodily remains of all human beings, irrespective of age or stage of development. These should not be bases for discriminating against, certain classes of human beings for the purposes of recognizing their humanity and acknowledging the human dignity that is inherent in being a member of the human family.
Now, why is the burial of a miscarried or a stillborn babies not addressed in South African legislation at all? And what does this constitution have to say about this at this moment?
Yeah. So at the moment, there is provision made for the burial of certain stillborn babies, those who are stillborn after 26 weeks. But then when it comes to those who are stillborn before that, we see it as an arbitrary marker. It makes no sense. For those, there is no protection. There's no right for their parents to bury them. And so the Constitution talks very specifically about human dignity, the fact that everyone has inherent dignity and everyone has the right to have their dignity respected and protected. It also talks about the integrity of the human body, and to be treated with respect in relation to your body. Um, and we don't see any basis for interpreting the Constitution as limiting the, let's say, the right or the entitlement to recognize the humanity and the human dignity of an unborn baby. We see no basis in the Constitution for limiting that to people, to only people who died after they had been born.
True.
That I mean, there's no basis
Yeah.
for that argument to be successfully made. So that would be the constitutional basis for our case.
Now, why and against who are you fighting this case at this stage? I know in middle November the case is coming up in Pretoria again.
Yes. Yeah, so this case, we are involved as a very specific party. It's called a friend of the court. So we were not the party to the case that instituted the matter. There was another party called the Voice of the Unborn Baby non-profit company. They instituted the case, and we joined the case as a friend of the court for a very specific reason, which is to assist the court with the application of constitutional values, interests, and rights to this specific subject matter that the case deals with. So that is the basis for our involvement. On the question who we are fighting against, we're not really fighting against someone. The case has, as all cases have, it has a responding party and a opposing party, which in this case is the Ministers of Health and of Home Affairs. They've got certain legislation and regulations that has given us this current legislative framework, which in our view operates unconstitutionally. So they're getting an opportunity to defend their legislation and their regulations. But the case is really against a set of rules and legislative content that is illegitimate, that is unconstitutional, and should be challenged and should be changed. And there's obviously reasons why the legislation is what it is. It is informed by prevailing worldviews, by certain views about the human person, about which human beings should have rights, should have human rights. We know that in South Africa, because we follow from a Roman tradition, the Roman Dutch law being the tradition from which South African law developed, that law only recognized human beings as being right bearers and having certain rights against the state and against others from the moment of birth. So that is the reason why we have this situation. But for some other reason, our legislature has pulled back from the moment of birth, pulled back to the point of viability, and said viability is the point at which we will recognize the inherent value in the bodily remains of this miscarried baby, which, like I mentioned, which is completely arbitrary and irrational. There should be no distinction between a 20-week-old or a 25-week-old and 6 days and a 26-week-old baby.
Now, what can we do to support you in this case? As I mentioned before, the case is coming up middle November. What can we as parents and human beings just do in this case?
Yeah. So I would say the main thing is for people to be informed, right? So read up on this case. There's been a lot said in the media already about it. There's been interviews, radio interviews that's been done. So things will be on podcasts and so on about the issue. So be informed about the issue. The next point is start talking about it. In South Africa, because this topic touches on the unborn babe, in South Africa we have legal abortion. I mean, this is a well-known fact. But there's never been a debate on whether South Africa should have legalized abortion. When Parliament passed the Choice on Termination of Pregnancy Act in 1996, it was from beginning to end a political decision made by the majority party ANC of the day. And they said to all their MPs There will be no conscience vote on this point. We will vote this legislation into law, and it will be so in South Africa. So we've never had a debate. This obviously is on a slightly different topic, but it is necessary for people to start thinking about this, reasoning about this, trying to get a proper understanding of why would we treat unborn babies different from babies who've already been born. Because I mean, there's so many arguments about, why you should have legal abortion and so on. But most of these things fall flat when you really scrutinize them. So that's the thing, is to talk about it, ask the hard questions, and people must have they must have courage. They should be brave, right, to challenge untenable views that they can't agree with. Challenge the views out there in society, which wants to distinguish between babies before birth and babies after birth. And then in the final instance, the reality is that to do a court case is really expensive. So if there are people out there who agree with this point of view, want to support this case, then that's one of the ways that they can really make a difference, is to enable us to cover the costs of litigation. That is a reality that to take a case to court is not an inexpensive exercise.
Cause for Justice aims to protect and promote the constitutional rights and freedom of each member of society. For more info on their work, visit causeforjustice.org. They're also on Facebook and on Instagram.